For the first time in history, the Catholic Church has an American Pope. The nightcap is still here. Mary, of all the cardinals, what do you think of this choice at a time when isolationism is rising around the world? The Catholic Church chose a man, an American-born man who devoted his life to missionary work, serving the poorest of the poor.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly in the mold of Francis. Francis brought him to Rome. What struck me most about him coming out to speak to people is that, yes, he is the first American Pope. He did not speak in English. He spoke in Italian. He spoke in Spanish. He talked about Peru. But he did not speak in English. He wasn't out there in a White Sox cap, even though, you know, who knows, maybe he wanted to be. But to me, that's meaningful. That means that, like, his Americanness is not the primary factor in who he is as Pope or who he wants to present as Pope. And so we'll see how that plays out. You know, I think a lot of us have seen the quote floating around from, I think it was a bishop saying, you know, we can't have an American Pope until America is on the decline. You know, that's definitely echoing in my mind. You know, the fact that the church didn't want to have, theoretically, an American in charge, because then you have an American superpower and you have an American Pope, right? And so what does that mean about this appointment? I don't know.
Is this a rebuke of the certain type of Catholicism and Christianity that MAGA supports?
I mean, there is that nexus, you know, we've seen, and which actually precedes Trump, we should point out, of kind of growing conservatism in, you know, the American church. We saw that during Francis's tenure as well, and, you know, the kind of sub-theme of grumbling that you'd hear in some of those circles. I also think it's interesting, you know, to think that the counterpoint to the idea of what America is and the primary representative of America will arguably not be the belligerent, anti-immigrant, hostile, indulgent, louche kinds of behavior that we've seen emanate from the White House, but a very distinctly different idea of what America or what an American is.
To a point, because he has not been as favorably disposed, for instance, to the LGBTQ community as Francis was. There are lines that he's not willing to cross that Francis was. And so I think that he's not quite as progressive as his predecessor, although he's nowhere near as conservative as Benedict or John Paul II.
But what he does do, and people keep trying to paint him as political because he's called out J.D. Vance on Twitter, but it's not about politics, what he's calling out. It's about standing up for humanity.
It's about cruelty, and it's about a term that got co-opted, I think, into some larger, distinctly American political discourse. But as someone who grew up Catholic, mom read at Mass, I was an altar server, did the whole thing, all the sacraments, blah, 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 blah. Social justice is a fundamental concept in the Catholic Church. The idea that we care, and wait for it, it's shocking, we care for the poor. We care for those who cannot defend themselves.
Social justice is rooted in Catholicism, not in wokeness, whatever that is.
Yes, and so the whole idea of J.D. Vancian Catholicism, if anything, it's a rebuke of the idea from, and again, not to condescend to the adult converts, love you guys, cool, but the whole idea of an old school Catholicism that was just, hey, look at Catholic Charities, the work they do with people who are undocumented. This is some real stuff.
And I will
real
add,
stuff helping poor people.
I'll add that, you know, my politics that people later kind of criticized me for being woke were a product of the social justice teachings that I got from St. Paschal Baylon and Church in Queens. And so, you know, the idea that this is radical to have empathy for the poor, or woke to have empathy for the poor, or to be concerned about people who are undocumented, or to have a fundamental sense of people's humanity, you know, is right there in those teachings.
But I do think about what Jelani was saying about how Trump offers this idea of corruption is the baseline, like that's what we should be aiming for, it's open to you. And I think the Pope offers the counterpoint to that. And that will be very interesting to see how it plays out, because I don't think popes want to engage politically.
No.
But I think it'll be impossible
But
not
they are